It is Hall of Fame night for the Buffalo Sabres, the class of 25, if you want to call that. Rob Ray night. Rob Ray's going into the Hall of Fame. We'll talk about Rob, the Predators, and a lot more coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and thanks for making this Friday edition one of your first listens every day of the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. That includes checking us out on our YouTube channel, where you can watch the show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is presented by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. It is a game night, and it is a cool night, as one of maybe the last cool nights of the year at the arena. Rob Ray is going into the Buffalo Sabres Hall of Fame, the class of 2025, as they're calling it, even though they only really have one-man classes here most often. So Rob Ray is going into the Sabres Hall of Fame. It's all going to be about him tonight, and it is a very cool night because of what he means to the community, what he is as a player in Sabre lore. I mean, it's very unique. So we'll get to all that coming up today on the Locked On Sabres podcast, remembering some of his best fights. A couple of goals, although, of course, he wasn't known for that, but there's a couple of goals that spring to mind that are famous for Rob. And then I want to get to tonight's opponent, the Nashville Predators, and not even specifically in the matchup, but they are having a strange season. We talked about them. I talked about them when speaking about Elias Pettersson on our last episode. Nashville is a team that very much could be looking at trading for Pettersson, but there's nothing that concrete that ties them to the situation just yet other than rumors. So we'll talk about why they're having such a bad year on today's show as well. If you would like to hit us up on our text club, you can follow us, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, and you get all the text alerts. You can have a conversation. You want a question answered in there, you could do that. Again, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. So this is only the second Sabres inductee into the Sabres Hall of Fame in the last 11 years. The Buffalo Sabres have a Hall of Fame. It's got the run of names and pictures there in the hall on the way from the locker room out to where the players leave the ice. And one thing about that Hall of Fame is it had been kind of defunct or left alone for a really long time, as a lot of things have for this organization, if we're being honest, for many, many years. In fact, if you look at the video that the Sabres released with Terry Pegula, with Rob kind of unveiling his picture in the Hall of Fame, or that Hall of Fame run there, the logo at the start for the Sabres is the Sabre Navy logo with the gray piping around it, which they have not used now in like 6 years. That's the logo that is still up there. So they left it alone for a long time. The Sabres did not have anybody go into their Hall of Fame between 2014 and 2023, between the two goaltenders, Dominik Hasek in 2014, Ryan Miller in 2023. But those weren't even like Hall of Fame nights. Those guys went in on the night that their jersey was retired. Like when those nights were sold in season ticket packages or whatnot, it wouldn't have been for jersey retirement. It wouldn't have been for Hall of Fame. It would have been for jersey retirement, and they're also going in the Sabre Hall of Fame. So the last time, to my knowledge, that the Sabres really sold a night on, hey, this is so-and-so's Hall of Fame night. Blank is going into the Buffalo Sabres Hall of Fame. The last time they sold a game like that was 13 years ago. 13 years ago in 2012, when Rick Jeanneret and Dale Hawerchuk went in the same year. Before that, 2011, you had Jim Kelly, the famous sports writer here in Buffalo, along with Alexander McGillney. Before that, you had Joe Crozier and Jim Lorenz in 2010, and so on and so forth. But the last night they had for this was Jeanneret And that's before his jersey retirement many years later. And then the late, great Dale Hawerchuk, who has since passed away. Nothing since then. That's the last time they had a Hall of Fame ceremony, just for the guys going into the Hall of Fame, not for jersey retirement. So I hope that this Rob night opens the door to at least one of these a year, maybe more. But if you want to just stick with one a year for right now, because, you know, at some point soon they're gonna really run out of guys, because they have a drought here that not many are gonna make it from. But Jason Pominville, Thomas Vanek come right to mind as obvious. Those guys should be in the Sabre Hall of Fame at some point. I don't actually know if there are many more. You know, like should Drury or Briere get in? I mean, maybe Danny Briere, you would say, would get in because he is so beloved. And I know this comes into the equation with some of these things when teams are putting stuff like that together. It also matters if you think the guy is going to come for his Hall of Fame night. And I wonder if they would be worried about Drury not showing up and how embarrassing that would look. But Briere, I think, would come back. Briere loves it here. Briere loves the team. He, of course, has his job right now with the Flyers, but I think maybe Briere would do it. But I think Vanek and Pominville are the obvious ones. Vanek, Pominville. Beyond that, I don't think Lindy Ruff is in the Sabres Hall of Fame. Now, in fact, I'm looking at the list right now. He is not. They've kind of complicated the matter by him being the coach. And you want a night like that where, you know, the guy comes back and there's some nostalgia. We've already done that with Lindy this year. So maybe in 3-4 years' time, if Lindy isn't the coach anymore and a couple of years have passed, then you bring him back and you do Hall of Fame night with Lindy Ruff. So he's someone that will get in, of course, eventually. I kind of think Lindy deserves a banner, but, you know, if they want to do Hall of Fame. But either way, Rob gets his night tonight, and that is absolutely deserved. Rob Ray has been a part of this community basically from 1989 on. He gets to the Sabres. He's drafted in 1988. He gets to the Sabres in 1989-90. That's his first season with the club. Scores on his first shift, right? Like that's one of his, I think he has got two really famous goals. One of them is that. He's one of the few that scored on his first shot for the Buffalo Sabres. And on his first shift. So Rob's got that. And from that day on, he's basically been a part of the fabric of Buffalo other than the 2 months that he was in Ottawa at the end of the 03-04 season when he got sent there at the trade deadline for future considerations. Other than that, and that was only 6 games that he played for the Ottawa Senators, everything else was Buffalo. Everything else was the Sabres. He goes from, you know, a player of, you know, a different type of stature because he's a fighter, but I mean, he wore an A, you know, like he was a leader at some point at the end of his career. He had played 10 years for the team, more than 10 years, 13 years, 14 years for the team. And then he comes back in 06 as a broadcaster, and he's been doing that job ever since. And I talked to him on the morning show today, and he even said, like, I never thought I was going to be a broadcaster for this team. But, you know, they asked me to do it, and I liked it, and I got to stick around, and bam, I'm doing it. Just to show what he does in the community, he won the King Clancy Trophy in 1999, and the King Clancy Trophy, if you don't remember what that is, given annually to the player who best exemplifies leadership qualities on and off the ice and who's made a significant humanitarian contribution to his community. He's always out and about in the community. He's always giving away stuff, toys at Christmas time. He's always doing the turkeys for tickets at Thanksgiving that the Sabres are involved with. Rob's always, when there was the shooting at Tops a couple of years ago, Rob's right out there, giving his support as best he can. You know, you can't really do much after the fact other than be there. But Rob's always there. And he is very approachable. Right? Like all the stories that we've heard today about Rob is you can walk right up to him and he'll have a conversation with you about anything. My dad has a story about talking to Rob Ray about fishing, just running into him at like a sporting goods store. Rob's obviously a big fisherman. So, you know, no one's ever had a bad word to say about him here. And I will say from my position, I never really met Rob until I am the producer for Chopin the Bulldog. in the afternoons on WGR when Rob would come on every Sabre game night at 4:00. And as the producer of that show, and as someone that listened to that show even before I worked there, that was the best guest of the week. Rob was so good because he is funny and he's gonna banter back and forth with you. He's gonna make fun of you, right? Like it's like he probably would have with teammates. He's doing the same thing. And those segments were always so good. And if you could get a good story out of Rob, there's one that he used to tell about getting kicked out of a game, and he and the guy like run into each other in the hall, and they throw each other through like a curtain where like guys are working on like a wedding cake or so. I don't even know. It's like this wild story that's straight out of the movie Slapshot. And there's plenty more like that. So those segments I remember, and just like even talking to them for a minute sometimes on those game days was really cool. And the more you get to know them, the more you want to hang out with him, honestly. Rob Ray, awesome. And awesome for him that he gets to go in. He definitely does not like doing the speeches. He does not love being the center of attention in this way, but it'll be cool to have the fans show up, honor him. Good thing they did on a Friday night. I think the building should be pretty full tonight. I'm going to be there, and I know a lot of other fans will as well. The fighting itself, when we come back, I remember Rob right at the end, right? Like I am 9 when he gets traded. So I remember a little. Man, the YouTube rabbit hole with Rob Ray is a fun one to go down, though. And I've done it plenty of times before. I did it again today. I got a couple of observations from just doing that. And then also just kind of reflecting on his job. And while I don't for a second argue that fighting should be back in the NHL like it was then, there definitely is something lost by not having it anymore. That when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by Gametime. Hey, still time. If you want to go to this game tonight, check it out. Tickets are available on the Gametime app, and that's where you're going to get your best deals. I was using Gametime today. I was trying to get tickets to a concert up in Toronto this summer, and the presale tickets were so hard to get into because of those queues, how long it could take. So we don't get in until the very end, and like tickets are like a fortune by that point in time. So we're like, all right, well, let's wait till they go on sale tomorrow. And we wait, and those tickets are same thing, like super expensive, whatever. Like, all right, well, let's check the secondary market. And knowing, Gametime from the show here and using it in the past, I'm like, well, of course I'm going to Gametime. So I go to Gametime, and I don't know how often you're going to get this, but hey, for this one instance, it worked for me. The deals that you get on the secondary market at Gametime, they were less than half of what I would have had to spend being last up in that presale yesterday. So super valuable. Gametime Picks is also a great deal. Makes you getting tickets for live events even easier. Filters out all the fluff. Shows you only incredible deals on the great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, it's Rob Ray night down at the arena. 6:05, he's going in to the Sabres Hall of Fame. Be a pretty cool ceremony. A lot of alumni back in town, so we'll see who we get on that front as well. Going down the Rob Ray YouTube rabbit hole, a couple of observations. The Domi fights, of course, are amazing, and there's a million of them. You could spend all day watching those. Steve Webb, former fighter and fourth liner of the New York Islanders. And this is when the Islanders wore the fisherman jerseys, Steve Webb, who had 532 penalty minutes in his career. So he's a fighter. There are 3 Rob Ray Steve Webb fights on YouTube. Every one of them, Rob is just pummeling this dude. I don't know why this guy kept coming back for more. Steve Webb. There's one where Rob lands a perfect right hand, and then he's wobbling, and he gets back up off his knees. He should have stayed down. Webb gets back up, and Rob gets him 2 more times, drops him to the ice. It's like just good night. Another one, he's fighting Webb, and at the end, after they had swung a lot, Rob pulls the jersey over Webb's head, and he full Superman uppercut to Steve Webb, and he's dazed after that. And then another one, he goes back at Rob, and Rob is just, again, pummeling him from the top, landing rights. I don't know what this dude should have stayed away from Rob, but he didn't, I guess. Maybe he learned after the third time. That was an observation. All the brawls are so good. You know, whether it's against the Flyers where Garth Snow is coming out of the net to go after Rob because Rob's on top of some guy. Whether it's him in the Garth Snow, Steve Shields brawl right before the goalies start going. Kordic, who's a big guy, Philadelphia. He looks like he's 6'5", way taller than Rob. Rob picks him up and slams him on the ice. This is before the two goaltenders fight. There's another one. There's so many good brawls on YouTube for the Sabres that you just didn't even know existed. There's one against Vancouver in 98 that, like, again, not even a famous one. I don't know that I've ever heard a story told about it or even like the Sabres play highlights of it. But Matt Barnaby, for the Gino Ojic of the Canucks, runs Dominic Hasek. So Matt Barnaby, the next shift or a couple shifts later, he skates down when Sean Burke, the Canucks goalie, is not expecting it, and he runs him in response to retaliate. And now all hell breaks loose. And out of the pile, Rob grabs Trevor Linden, who is the Canucks captain and one of their best players, I'm sure, at the time. And Linden's a big guy, but not a fighter. And it's funny. Rob is firing rights at Trevor Linden. He pulls him away, the Canucks captain, and he's firing rights. And all the Canucks, they forgot about their goalie getting run. They're not protecting him anymore. They're going to protect the captain because they're all going, oh no, Rob's got him. And they weren't really able to get over to him, and that was a fight that lasted like a minute. So many good clips, so many good highlights. I mentioned his first goal that he scored in his first shot. There's that. There is the Sports Center commercial. This is Sports Center where he's a security guard at ESPN. There is the video of him fighting a Quebec Nordiques fan who would ran out of the ice, and Rob's pummeling him. And then the other goal that is really cool is Game 4, the 99 conference finals. Go watch the video of that. The Bob Cole call of that game is really cool. I couldn't find the RJ one. Bob Cole calling the game. Sabres had just scored right before that. Now Rob scores. Stu Barnes throwing the puck like towards the middle. Rob scores a between the legs goal, backhand. And Lindy's laughing. Everyone's like, holy cow, Rob Ray just scored. And while it's one of those cool, I don't know if I've ever heard the building louder than in this clip. You know, I'm not there in person, but in the clip, it's like you couldn't imagine the building being louder. And as the goal announcement is being made, score on the goal, number 32, Rob Ray. As that's being said, Sabres come back on a 2-on-1, bang, another goal by Jeff Sanderson, and the building just keeps going nuts. It's an awesome video. It includes, like, the highlight of it is Rob scoring, but the whole thing is awesome. Definitely check it out if you've never seen it before, from the 99 conference finals. All great memories. And this is the thing I wanted to get to about fighting in general and celebrating Rob tonight, because really what it is it's celebrating a bygone era in the NHL, one that I do not think they should bring back. Right? We know too much about concussions now. We know too much. And we've seen so many tragic stories about former fighters in the NHL that have suffered from depression and some that have lost their life, right? Because of that. Whether it's, thinking of Wade Belak from 10 years ago, or Brett Rippon is another one of these, or Bob Probert, not Brett Rippon, excuse me. I got Rick Rippon. Of the NHL, and Bob Probert. Like, there's so many of these stories. Steve Montador is a little different, but maybe that one ties in a little bit as well. You just fighting with what we know about concussions now. You can't have it. You can't have it the way it was. I mean, you can have it a little bit, but you can't have it the way it was. That being said, man, the thing that is missing that you'll never get back the same way, unless you're in the playoffs when you get some scrums and whatnot, you'll never get the intensity of those games back, where you had this side story along with the game where, okay, the game goes the way it goes. Maybe it's a fun game, maybe it's not, but there might be this side story of whether it's Rob and it's Domi, or whether it's Garth Snow going, and you might get a goalie fight tonight. I know it didn't happen that often, but you might get something. It was possible. You knew every night it was possible that you were going to get a Donnybrook, and that doesn't exist anymore, right? It's like it'd be stunning if you had one once this season like that for the Buffalo Sabres. So when those happened, you hear those clips, the building is going nuts. They love it. And that hatred of the other team, that intensity, that emotionally charged atmosphere where you want to climb out on the ice and you want to go at it too. That's more for me, less the one-on-one fight that Rob, of course, did a million times, but more the line brawls that Rob would have also been involved in. That is really where something happens on the ice. The previously mentioned one against Vancouver, Barnaby runs their goaltender on purpose. So now that event sparks everything that came after. It's not a made up, hey, we want to go, you want to go? Okay, let's fight. Like that, to me, there's a different level of it when something on the ice predicates everything that happens after. And you don't really get those anymore. Again, for good reason. They had to take it out of the game, I think. But it definitely is something that is missed at the same time. I think both can be true. Had to come out, but it's something that is definitely missed. When we come back, tonight's opponent, Nashville. What on earth has their season been? It's very strange, and it's been very bad. A lot of stuff good to go on with them. Coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Back here on Locked On Sabres, the Sabres and the Predators tonight. If you check out the odds over at our partners over at FanDuel Sportsbook, and you're looking at what the odds are tonight, the Sabres, who were a underdog or favorite against Boston the other night at home, are a slight underdog against Nashville. Very strange. Nashville is the same amount of points as the Buffalo Sabres do. And if you have not seen anything that's going on with their season yet this year, they are in this weird place where they went all in this offseason. All in. Barry Trotz now running the show. He's the general manager. He thought, you know what, with Philip Forsberg and whoever not, of course, UC Saros, who they just brought back and traded away the young guy behind him, Askarov, Roman Josi on the top pair still. Like their top guys are starting to get a little older. So I think what they decided was, let's go all in one more time before we think we have to rebuild. So they did. And they went out and they won the Stamkos sweepstakes. They signed Steven Stamkos to a 4-year, $8.8 million per year deal. They signed Jonathan Marchessault from Vegas at 34 years old. Both those players are 34 to a 4-year, $5.5 million per year deal. They signed Brady Shea at 30 years old on the blue line to a 4-year, $7 million per year deal. So they made these 3 big investments to go on top of Ryan O'Reilly, who they brought in at 33 years old at $4.5 million for a couple of years too. Like very aged group. Gustav Nyquist on the team at 35 years old in the top 6 still. Forsberg's 30. Colton Sission's at 31. Just so many of their, Yossi's 34. All of their important players are in their 30s. So, okay, I can kind of respect that on one front, but it hasn't worked. And now maybe they think they're a little bit stuck because now they're kind of tied up in these older contracts and they're not good on top of that. That's a dark place to be. And it's why, if you've read any stories about Nashville this year, it's all about how Barry Trotz is saying, if this continues to not work, like I'm starting the rebuild plan. Like he's telling him, he's threatening the team. You guys better start winning or I'm going to start rebuilding. And that could mean trading Stamkos, despite the fact that they just signed him. Maybe they could trade Marchessault. I know he has a full no movement clause, so it's a little bit different there. Trading O'Reilly has come up for them. Like trading it all. Trading all the big important players away and starting over. And I've not really brought them up for the Sabres because I just don't think any of them really fit. The Sabres, if they add, it's got to be a guy like Pettersson who's in the age sweet spot of 26 years old. And there's nobody on Nashville that really fits that. Like, I guess you could say them trading for Stamkos would be cool. But at 34, and of course, there's the trade protection conversation here that Stamkos has. He's got a full no movement clause. Like, you can't really get that idea off the ground. So they haven't come up yet this year a lot, but they're bad. They're really bad, and this is probably the beginning. This is the end for them. They are going to start a rebuild. They've been good almost every year for their entire existence, right? There are so few seasons where the Predators have been bad. But this year, it's happened, and it signals the beginning of maybe a few years where they're going to be pretty bad because they're about to blow it up, it looks like, in Nashville. So a little confusing to me. They are playing a little bit better as of late, I guess, but a little confusing to me that they are a home the Sabres are a home dog tonight against Nashville. So my sneaky bet of the night would be Sabres money line. Plus 105. You get plus money at home against a bad team. They often do win these nights, by the way. They won on RJ night to bring RJ out on the ice. They won against the Islanders in overtime on Miller night, right? They won Craig Anderson's last game's a little bit different, but same thing. Like, they wanted to win it for him at the end. They won that game to give him that ovation at the end. So they often win these games, and I'm going to pick them to win this game too against Nashville. Enjoy it. We will talk next about the salary cap. We learn more today about what the cap is going to be in the NHL for not just next year, but the next 3 years. And it is very interesting in how the Sabres fit into that picture with all that we've wondered about them and cap stuff over the years. So that'll be our next episode. We'll talk about what happened tonight, and we'll continue to watch on Elias Pettersson. I am thinking more and more that it's them or they keep him every day that passes. And I'm starting to get more confident that they might actually pull it off. So hopefully the next time we talk to them, we have a trade to talk about. But if not, we'll get to the salary cap and the Sabres place in it, because I think there's a lot to be said about it. And internal cap stuff, what they'll have to spend, floor. There's a lot to get to. We'll talk to you next time. You're in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.